exciting punters, lots more besides. She's a director of the Society of Independent Brewers. She's been an important critic of institutional sexism within the beer industry. She's a bona fide celeb. If you turn on BBC News Channel or the lifestyle programmes, you'll see her on TV, so taking craft beer mainstream. She's a passionate home brewer. And in fact, she came along to, I brew with Beer Boards. She came along to Beer Boards very generously one evening a few months ago. So from home brewer to superstar brewer. What a starter source. By the way, she's just been named Brewer of the Year by the Beer Writers Guild. What can I say? Jaega Wise, over to you.
Thank you. That's quite an intro. So I wanted to talk to you lot today about the reasons why I homebrew. I just wanted to talk to you about it from a commercial perspective and just how important homebrewing can be in the role of a working, active brewery. We've not got pointers, so I'm going to very awkwardly point at him every time we change. So in the beginning, so my very first homebrew was a long time ago. It was when I was at uni, and it was a good old-fashioned syrup kit. And I just want to get a show of hands for who's ever brewed with syrup on a kit like this before. Okay, fabulous. That is most of the room. And yeah, on a kit like this, you're not going to make great beer. However, it's so important to help you to understand the basics of how you make beer. And one of the most common mistakes that I hear about, especially in homebrew, is the hygiene side of it going wrong. And if you can brew a beer like this, and you can brew a beer cleanly, then I would say you're probably ready to go to the next level, which is beginning to introduce real hops, beginning to introduce grain. And what's great about a kit like this is the availability. So, one of my favourite shops is Bouquets. And there is a great brewing section in there. It may not be the most complex, and I'm sure now you can get much more online from like Malt Miller and people like that, but this has an accessibility. It's available on every high street across the country. The amount of times I go in there, I'm like, oh crap, I've just broken my hydrometer, I need this thing, and it really is amazing. And it gets people, when they're thinking about, you know what, I want to have a go at brewing, it hooks those people in because it is so easy and it's relatively inexpensive. I think for most people, if they were to look at grain, hops, yeast for the first time and we're trying to make a beer with it, that might be quite overwhelming for a lot of people. So it's a wonderful, wonderful introduction. This is not sponsored by Wilkinson, but I just love it so much. So what I then did was I slowly began to swap out the kind of packets with real kind of ingredients. So the first thing I did was I started using real hops. And then the next thing I did was started using all grain. And way back then, so this is Andrew from Wildcard, way back then, in 2011, things weren't like they are now. It was quite tricky to get hold of brewing equipment. Now you can go online, you can get heat exchangers, you can get all sorts of things. But back then it was some copper pipe, which we bent ourselves. And we still literally have this in the brewery. We're not using it, it's in a cupboard somewhere, but you never know when I might need to exchange something quite quickly. And this is really where our kind of experimentation began. So this is us brewing, and we used so hops, and we used they're actually jasmine petals. And what's interesting is often you, especially when you start homebrewing, you think, you know what, I'm going to try adding some fruit to my beer. You know what, I'm going to try adding this to my beer, I'm going to try adding that to my beer. Especially brewing with fruit, it's probably one of the most complex, one of the most difficult styles to brew. And yeah, lots of people just kind of throw it in there and just let's see what happens, and that's what's absolutely great about it. Yep, then this was one of our first brews. This was the beginning of our beer called the Jack of Clubs. And the yield was not that great there, but but you can see that's on top of Will from Wildcards. He was doing politics at the time at uni, and just all of us were trying to squeeze brews in all over the place. And that was one of the first beers. So I mean, I'm quite proud of that. That looks pretty good. Like it looks pretty alright. I'm originally from the Midlands. A lot of the Wildcard team are from the Midlands. So for us, like a traditional bitter like that would have been, being able to achieve that would have been like Christmas. We were very, very happy with that beer. It's quite clear. So the next thing we did was we really honed our recipe. So we thought, what do we want to come out with? What do we want Wildcard to look like? So for us, we started with the Jack of Clubs, which was our ruby red ale at the time. And this was in 2012 when it was quite unusual to come out with only one beer that was a red beer at the time. But we thought, you know what, we're going to stick to our guns, we're going to go with it. And we had lots and lots and lots of different batches, and the batch that we thought was the best one, we called it the Jack of Clubs because we had nothing to hand at the time. We just had some playing cards, and we put them on each batch, and the one that was really good was the Jack of Clubs. And that's what became the first Wildcard commercial recipe. And we didn't actually homebrew in terms of like weekly for that long. It was around about a year where we were homebrewing kind of in and out, if that makes sense. So the next thing we did was we decided to obviously brand it. What is our beer going to look like? And I don't know if anyone saw these beers back in the day, but this was the original Jack of Clubs. Our original plan was to just have a playing card tied to a bottle with no labels, and then we found out that was very illegal. And yet we wouldn't be able to sell it anywhere. So we had to introduce a second label, which just had like basic legal information. So, and you can see these are homebrew bottles. Homebrew bottles. You can see the one on the left is a Hobgoblin bottle, quite obviously, and the one on the right will be some bottle we just found from somewhere. And what we used to do, so what we did was we thought, you know what, we've got this great homebrew recipe. We're going to try and go commercial. So we used to go around all the bars and all the pubs of London with this homebrew and try and sell it. And say to people, you know what, if we get enough orders, we'll have enough money to put together a contract brew or a cooking brew. And the game was to see how long it would take the publican to realise that our beer is in a Bulmers bottle, and for them to realise that we weren't actually commercial brewers. So they would say things like, oh yeah, I would love to try it, just leave the bottle here. We'd be like, no, you have to try it now. And like cover up the label. So that was the Jack of Clubs. So when we went commercial, we were not rich people at Wildcard. We didn't come from a lot of money. So we thought, okay, how can we do this? So we managed to get together about £2,000. It wasn't a huge amount of money. And we used that to pay for the time on another brewery's equipment. And at the time it was Brentwood Brewery, with a brewer you may have heard of, a lady called Sophie Durand. She was the head brewer of Brentwood at the time. So we took her our homebrew recipe, and we were like, you know what, we really want to do this on a big scale. And she helped us to brew the very first batch of the Jack of Clubs commercially. And this is what it looked like. So it was a pallet of bottles, and I think it was 8 casks. And we tried to sell it. We tried to flog it to the pubs. This is actually in the basement of a pub called the Warrant Officer in Higham Hill, and if anyone's ever been there, it was once known as I think it's the most violent pub in the UK. So if you look at a documentary on Sky, I think it's from 2007, still could be found on the internet. Someone got their arm chopped off in there a very long time ago, very East End. But we were based in their basement, and we were hand tying all of these tags onto the beer and trying to flog them to the industry. So we were really proud this day. This was us with like a full van what we call the full van back then. It's sending out beer to the public. And it's some of our very, very first customers, the people that kind of took a chance on us, was places like the Wenlock Arms, they bought a cask, the Queen's Head in King's Cross, they bought a cask. So just people who really decided to give us a chance and buy a cask at £70. That was literally us driving in the back of the zip van. Then we decided to get our first premises. So you're probably thinking, how have we got the money together to get our first premises? So what we did, there was a trust at the time called the Brightside Trust who were investing in young people getting into business at the time. So we approached them, and the day was very Dragon's Den, where they said, business idea, what's your business idea, what's your business idea? And we said, you know what, we've been trading for a year, we've got a list of 100 customers, please can we actually have some money to actually buy a brewery? So they lent us the full amount that they could, and that allowed us to get our first premises in Walthamstow. This is called our Ravenswood site. We didn't actually have the brewery at the time. Because cash flow was so lacking in our business, we just opened the bar. And our very, very first lot of customers, they were drinking, you can see just the Jaega Clubs. We just had the Jaega Clubs, and we bought beer from Hackney Brewery, who hadn't been started too long. We bought beer from East London Brewery. There was some London Fields at the time, way back when. But this is literally the very first pint that we sold as well to a customer. And kind of going on from then, we're able to get the brewery, etc., etc. But I really wanted to talk to you about where home brewing currently plays a part at Wildcard. So I currently run a spreadsheet at Wildcard called our Team Brew Ideas spreadsheet. And it's a place where every single member of the team, no matter who you are, can put down any idea. And no idea is a bad idea. There's been lots of bad ideas, but on paper, no idea is a bad idea. So this is just an example of this spreadsheet is huge, absolutely huge. And lots of people will write all sorts of things on there. I will pick the top 3 in a month, and I will brew it. And then we'll see how it comes out. Sometimes they're absolutely gorgeous, like our lime Berliner Weisse, which ended up being produced for a festival last year, and sometimes they're absolutely horrible. And that's what's great about homebrewing, is you have the freedom, you don't have the financial restraints, you can do whatever the hell you like. A beer that didn't work at all, but you can see rejected at the top, was the coconut Berliner Weisse. It's absolutely rank. It was, seriously, it was that combination of creamy and sour, it was too much, it was just too much. But if I'd have done that on a big scale, I'd have been in trouble. So this is just some pictures of me brewing the lime Berliner Weisse. This is at Brew Club. I don't know if anyone goes to Brew Club in Clacton. I'm a really, really big fan of people getting together and learning off each other and having a good time and brewing. So what we then do at Wildcard is all the beers I've made, we will taste them. And I will give the team some sheets, and we'll get all the team together, bar staff, sometimes people in Walthamstow if they want to come along, and we'll taste everything, and I'll get them to rate them and get them to comment on them. And what's wonderful about this is we've had lots of beer come out of this that's ended up commercial. So we have got our Nipa and our Passion Fruit Ghosts that came out this year that came from this method, and they all started out as home brews. And what's interesting is the commercial brew is considerably better because we home brewed them first. We are able to get our dosing correct. We're able to, for example, with the Ghost, our salts level correct. Every single comment I had was, Jaega, this is lovely, too much salt. So, I was able to tweak that. And especially when you're brewing with fruit or when you're brewing with weird ingredients, there's no rule book here. There's no book of this is how much raspberry pulp you add. It's very much, yes, you can talk to other brewers, but depending on what exactly you're looking for, experimentation is absolutely important and it's absolutely key. Yep. So this is the passion fruit grows on the left, and that's the Nipah on the right, that came up this year through this method. So I just want to leave you with my final comment, that the home brews of today are the commercial brews of tomorrow. So just everyone keep on homebrewing.
Brilliant. Okay, we've got time for some questions. I'm going to ask the first one while you lot think of your questions. And the question is Jaega, how well do the recipes scale up from an experimental homebrew level to a commercial level?
Some are easier than others. So, for example, the Jaega clubs. If anyone was to look at the Jaega clubs on paper, you would think it was really weird. It doesn't do things quite correctly. So, a good example is the torrefied wheat level. You should, when using torrefied wheat, not really go above 3%. It's generally used for head retention to get that nice, thick, creamy head. In our Jaega clubs, it's like 8%. And that's not the mistake a commercial brewer would make. That's probably a mistake someone who's new to it would make. However, it tastes so good that what the hell, just kind of keep on going, right? And so I just scaled that up directly and didn't change it, even though my instincts were to tweak that a little bit. Whereas other things, like especially when you're working with fruit, it's really expensive on a commercial stage, and there's lots of things. There's an intensity you can get on a homebrew stage, which can sometimes be lacking commercially, simply because of the financial restraints. So,
thank you. Right, time for some questions from the audience. Any questions? Yes, please.
What formal training have you had for brewing? It'd be wonderful to hear you say none.
The question is, what formal training has Jaega?
So I have had kind of engineering training, so from a different perspective. So I'm a trained chemical engineer, so I've kind of come at it from that angle, and the angle of processes. I've not done my my traditional brewing exams. I've done a huge amount of study, and I come from an engineering side. But there's lots of different ways you can get into brewing. You can do it the engineering side, kind of science way. You can do it via apprenticeships. It's perfectly possible to just learn from other people. Or you can do it through like formal IBD training. That's what's wonderful about brewing, is you don't need a piece of paper. It helps, it really helps, but you don't need it.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, please.
For those of us that might want to follow in your footsteps, to go from home brewing to then selling your beer, what kind of red tape do you need to watch out for?
The red tape question.
Oh, the red tape question. Honestly, the thing that we did was we probably bordered on, is this okay or is this acceptable red tape wise? You can see by our branding with the tag tied around it. Our argument always was someone would have to forcibly try and remove the label in order to get it off. But it was definitely towing the line as to acceptability at the time. So we didn't worry about it a huge amount. The things I worried about was stuff like the information you have to have, the legal information being on the bottle. Didn't have a huge amount of red tape. Get yourself a personal license, I would say. And if you are going to apply for a brewing license on a premises, they say it takes 6 weeks. It doesn't. It takes like 4 or 5 months. So be prepared for that. And talk to your local council is what I would say. Make friends with your local council. We've only been able to do what we've been able to do and get the licensing we've been able to have because we made friends with our council.
Okay, next question.
I was just going to say, before we move on, HOMEBREW have promised to answer that specific question about how to scale up, and they're over in the main hall all day to discuss that option for anybody that wants to have a go at going commercial.
We're getting the cross-marketing game here. Brilliant. Any other questions? Okay, that was absolutely brilliant, Jaega. Thank you so much. Great start to the talks. The way this works, we're going to do talks, then there are going to be questions, you're going to taste beer, you're going to buy beer, you're going to buy merchandise, and you're going to come back for the next talks. But thank you, Jaega, for getting this off to such a great start. I will have Pete Brown at 1 o'clock.